Perfect. All right, Russ, thank you so much for taking the time with us.
No
For everyone
worries.
out there, I'm going to give you a little context on Russ. I had just started at Microsoft, early stage, launching a product to help our customers. And to put it blunt, I had no idea how to use Microsoft products. I had no clue. I was a G Suite shop, and so step number one was figure out how in the world I'm going to teach myself Microsoft. And I figured I could either go read a bunch and probably take me 6 months to a year, or I could see if there's an expert out there who understands Microsoft ins and outs. And that's when I found Russ. And so Russ was pivotal, basically my right hand man in shaping the product itself and shaping what could be possible, because he both was doing documentation along with teaching me, which I think is one of the most underrated skills you as a freelancer can have, is the ability to teach your customers and clients, because they probably don't know what the heck they're hiring you for. So with that said, there's a little context. Russ, thank you for making time for us.
No worries, Matt. Great to be here. And yeah, thanks for the opportunity to have a chat.
Yeah, of course. And so Russ, where in the world are you right now?
I'm actually in Southeast Asia, in Northeast Thailand. I live here now. I've been here for like 10 years now, all told. And I work exclusively online. So yeah, it's kind of enjoyable. The backdrop here is like something I was creating for my wife. She's a school teacher, and they're doing, because of the COVID-19, like they're having 50% students in the classroom and then 50% accessing from at home. So she was asking me about, backdrops for Zoom and things like that. So I kind of got this one for her and then left it up there. So apologies for that. I'm not actually in the classroom at the moment.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, like I said, it's perfectly fitting. You're about to teach us a bunch of crazy insights. And so, I mean, what better backdrop? I have an air con, which shows that I will teach you guys nothing, but Russ will be the real one here. So Russ, just a quick elevator pitch of what you do as a freelancer and what your customers look like.
Well, I do two main things as a freelancer. First of all, I'm a technical copywriter. I mean, I've been working with software companies for 21, 22 years now, and I've got this kind of affinity for SaaS. So my kind of ideal client is a SaaS technology organization, kind of a medium to larger organizations, that kind of thing. And I've done, over the last kind of 2 decades or so, I've done all kinds of documentation, the entire document life cycle, as well as understand, with the copywriting side, understanding the buyer's journey, the customer journey, and all those aspects of it. And, like I say, with the documentation, this can be from like writing websites to white papers to case studies to, you name it. One client in cybersecurity who I was hired for last year hired me as a technical writer to do all the admin stuff, but I haven't done any of that for them as yet. It's been purely the copywriting side of it. And that's one of the things that I do. The second one, as I mentioned, is kind of, is linked through to the writing side. And I'm also a certified Microsoft Word expert, which most people kind of don't, think, well, it's just Microsoft Word and things like that. But I've worked out this system, the main problem companies have with Microsoft Word is they don't understand how Microsoft Word works. Similar to yourself, Matt, when we connected is, it's just too complicated. It's just Microsoft Word. It's just for documents. But the problem is, it's actually costing a fortune within your organization. And if, we've all heard the cliche, work smarter, not harder. And I mean, I think I first heard that 20 odd years ago. But, with Microsoft Word, companies are working harder and not smarter. And that's the kind of crazy thing. And they don't know how to turn that around. Whereas I come into their organizations, I look at the way they're doing things, and I turn this process around with design and with customized training specific to how they do business. And I've achieved some fantastic results for clients, with their help, of course. But that's pretty much what I do. And it's kind of the focus that I've got these days. And if you think I can help, get in touch. That's what I'm here for.
Awesome. So I think the major thing that I always take away when talking with you, working with you, you name it, is the teaching aspect. The fact that you're not just going in and doing a gig, you are a very, very crazy heavy on teaching the client, which I'd argue is your most valuable strength. But I'm going to ask some more high level questions later, but I want to get really tangible right away on what does a project look like for you? Specifically, is it hourly? Is it a massive retainer? Is it project based? What does a typical sort of engagement look like for you?
Well, over the last few years, we're doing a lot of work through Upwork. Unfortunately, it's kind of the hourly rate process. That's not my ideal project because that's just based on, on time and effort, and it doesn't take into account any kind of experience and skill levels, that kind of thing. So for me, the ideal one is project based. Definitely, it's something that we can come in, we can look at the value to the company, look at what the constraints of the project are, look at what the deliverables are, the time aspect, and then quote based on that kind of qualification. That's kind of the ideal way. But unfortunately, with like what I was mentioning earlier with the Microsoft Word services, companies don't see that as, they just see Microsoft Word. So that's not something that is particularly they're open to. However, with something like the projects that you and I worked on, those are project based. They take the time. It's hard to quantify and things like that in terms of what's actually required. So in those terms, then it's definitely project based.
Yeah, and I think one thing I really want to learn from you is how do you quantify your work into being project based when you deal with a rather ambiguous skill? What I mean by that is if you're a designer doing PowerPoint, it's pretty simple, right? You show your portfolio, you have a bunch of past decks, and it's pretty easy for me as a client to know, this is what I'm going to get. This is the standard rate. It's a day rate. It's a project rate, whatever. But a lot of freelancers are sitting where you are, where they have this insane value, but it's not a value that is necessarily visible, meaning here's a past PowerPoint. So I'd love to just hear, like if I'm a client right now, what is that project and what does it look like? So kind of like, what's the headline? What are you going to do for me? And if you want to, how much is it going to cost?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. That's a difficult one. Like you say, it's where do you even start? The simplest calculation is on the rough guesstimation of time multiplied by the kind of hourly rate that you want to earn. That's the base formula. However, that doesn't necessarily take into account the complexity of the project. But that's kind of the starting point. But in terms of, let's say, what kind of project would I offer? Let's say I was going to do a Word project for a client where I'm going to go in, I'm going to redesign their entire Word system, and then I'm going to teach them how to use it. That's probably, I make a guarantee that if I can't save you at least 200 hours a year within your business, then you don't pay anything. So on that basis, my project's going to start somewhere in the region of about $5,000 for that, based on a certain criteria, depending on the project and the complexity. But that's kind of like a rough figure. With 26 years of experience of doing something, you've got to factor all this in. But the complexity is, of course, each of the projects is different. Clients have different requirements. And so you kind of have a starting point. But, that kind of thing, it's going to take 3 weeks to a month's work with the iterations and the reviews and things like that. But that's the kind of starting point.
So what I pulled away that I think is super tangible is its category, and then it's followed by an outcome. So you come in and you say, are you interested in blank category, which is anything Microsoft or Microsoft Word in this case? You then show the outcome. So, because I think that's where it's really tough, right? Is number one, you got to prospect. So you have to find the right project, or you have to do colds. But so I think what you hit on that made it tangible is, this is my category, Microsoft Word. Anyone coming through this pipeline, and I know you do more, like I know you do Microsoft documentation as well. So anything coming through this pipeline, I then have an outcome so that, I can give the guarantee and the potential warranty so that if you're the dumb client like me, okay, I'm going to save 200 hours. And if not, then it's going to be free. Awesome. So I want to go back to Russ pre-freelancing and deeply understand what was that journey like.
Pre-freelance, wow. How long we got? Phew.
Baby Russ, baby Russ.
Yeah, well, how did I get into free? Well, if yeah, I mean, rather than go back to, well, I'll start at the beginning. I joined the British Army straight from school. I did 7 years in the army, and then where I lived on the east coast of the UK there was a thriving offshore industry at the time. This was the beginning of the 1990s. And when I got out of the army, I went straight offshore, and I worked as I started off as just like what they call a roustabout, just a basic deckhand, and then worked my way up to roughneck and assistant derrickman, and that over a 4-year period. Then I had a bad accident on the rig. I fell headfirst through a hole and fractured my skull. I think the steel deck I landed on survived, but I came off a little bit worse for wear. The long and the short of it was I had to retrain. And I started using Microsoft Word, and then I got a job as a technical writer using Microsoft Word, and that just kind of spiraled from there. And I mean, I had no clue how to use Word at all, no clue whatsoever, like most of us. And then the first place I was hired, as I say, as a technical writer, the guy then knew how to use Word, and all of a sudden it tweaked. My brain kind of took it over. And then when I went freelancing this is 1999, I did my MCSE, my Microsoft Certified Systems Engineer on Windows NT. And this kind of got me into the software side of things. And it kind of took it from there. And every company I went to Barclays Bank, to Visa V, they were a Vodafone partnership thing and stuff like that, was just, their templates were awful. They just wasted so much time, so much money. So I'd go in there, I'd redesign them as part of the kind of writing process. And they kind of spiraled from there. And this was like I say, 20 years ago. But in the interim, a few things happened, and I kind of took a hiatus and went delivering sailing yachts for 5 years around the world and stuff like this, and traveled all over and did that kind of stuff as well. And then when I eventually ended up in Thailand, I was going to get a job. I did my certificate of English language teaching to adults, so I could be a teacher, teach English over here. And when I got over here, I heard about these online agencies, and I resorted back to doing my writing stuff from before. So when you say earlier, with the teaching side of things, my background is in instruction. I was an instructor in the British Army. I taught on the rigs as well, hands-on. Then when I was sailing, you have to teach your crew members how to sail because you're the only professional one on there. And then, of course, I do also a scuba diving instructor as well. So that's kind of helps with you kind of use your hands more when you're underwater because you blah, 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 when you're on, with your regulator in kind of thing. So this is why people tell me that I'm quite good with the instruction side of things because, like I say, my background for the last 20 odd years has been involved with teaching in one form or another at all times, which kind of all comes together into this single package. But that's kind of how I got into freelancing. So yeah, I just kind of fell into it.
So note to everyone else, you have to fall off a rig, go head first, and it's really how you have to jump in. There's no other way, right?
Yeah, that's a good good transition for it. Yeah, not one I'd actually recommend, but like I say, the rig survived. I came off a little bit worse, and the transition was a bit slow and painful, but I'm not sure that was whether because of my injuries or because of Word itself. But there you go.
So the takeaway for me though is you always had the skill. So you always were mastering the Microsoft Word and documentation angle of it. So whatever the environment was, whether it was being on Upwork, meeting someone at a restaurant, meeting someone in a coffee shop, you have your scoped tangible asset that you can deliver, which we talked about earlier is, category, and then the actual outcome that you can deliver per each. And I think what's really interesting, right, is you ended up in Thailand, but you jumped from a bunch of different places. But like I said, the actual skill and outcome didn't change. So to me, that's the big takeaway for other freelancers is just really, really harness whatever that skill is that you want to take over, be the best at it, and understand how to deliver someone value in a very, very scoped, tangible way. Because who knows, you might meet someone at a coffee shop, Upwork, you name it. So now I want to get into the first project turning into the second, turning into the 10th, turning into the 50th. What really changed going from, hey, this is cool and exciting, to this is actually a viable career path?
Well, when I started actually working online, it was initially as like a quality assurance manager for a construction company. And I mean, I've got no background in construction or anything like that, but it's the documentation side of it. And to be fair, I mean, I worked for that client, I think the first time was for about eight months or 9 months, I think, as a QA manager. And on and off, that client, he's still a client today, actually. After 9 years further on, he's still a client today. And I was chatting with him 2 days ago, actually. He's in Queensland in Australia, and they've just released the COVID-19 lockdown. For myself, the path I didn't really plan out this path as such. I don't specifically go after QA jobs or things like that. It's just if something came up and it interested me, then I'd think, oh yeah, I can do that, because ultimately it's all about, whether you're your business or you're a service provider, you're delivering a service to your customers or to your clients, and as long as you can help them, then that's basically where I was initially. And of course, the online market as such 10 years ago was a lot smaller than it is now. But over the course of that path, that's kind of helped me to focus in on what I can actually do for clients, because the danger is for a new freelancer is you try and do everything. You just try and get work. You just try and do this. That's the big problem, because certainly like with what's happened in 2020, so many people are now vying for the same jobs. That what makes you stand out? What makes you different? What can you bring to the table? And a conversation I was having this morning with one is, she said she's now starting out. How can I get started? How can I get clients? And it's like, well, why should they hire you? You need to understand what you bring to the table. That's critically important. Otherwise, you're just going to blend in, and that's the worst thing that you can do.
I couldn't agree more. I think one thing that I really want to call out with you specifically, and by the way, just I've noticed people in general, what they're really good at, they generally don't know, or they don't actually say, they just do. And one thing with you that you alluded to a little bit, but you alluded to the outcome and result, and I'm going to tell the audience why that's the case, is that you do build deep relationships with your clients. So like you mentioned, that first client you're still talking to today, when opportunities present, they're going to show up. Us, it's been what, Russ? It's been over 2 years. And anytime I have a question related to that, I reach out to you. I mean, even if it's deeper than just, hey, work, it turns into a friendship. And so whenever I see a funny dog meme, I send it your way. But what really, the reason for that I want the freelancers to take away is that, yes, you were personable, but you helped me understand how you could help me right away. So that first reaction, like the first time we talked, was not, hey, Russ, you love dogs. Let's do this project that you don't know what you're doing and I don't know what I'm doing, but let me just pay you for the sake of paying you, right? Like it was very clear. I'll never forget, you had a very clear scope, and you were like, this is what we can do within the first week. This is going to be the cost. This is going to be the outcome. It then turned into trusting you and saying, cool, now here's the next budget. Here's the next, it's then turned into 3 weeks. But so I really want to call that out as just, that's something that is very unique to you, that you've been able to harness the power of a very deep relationship with your clients. And for me personally, it's been because you've been able to help me really, you've been able to teach me what is required to accomplish the outcome that I want to get to. You know better than I do. But so, cool. I really want to talk about one amazing project that you are utterly proud of, and just basically give you the stage to talk about what that project was, how it came about, and what are the things that just really, really made it special?
Wow. I've done, yeah. What's the one real standout one? Rather, not fending off your question, but the project for me that kind of showed me the value of what I do, which is going back to your earlier question of, how do you price something like this? Was I did a project about 3 years ago, I was a Microsoft Word project, and the client had these horrendous reports, just two reports, just 2 Word documents, and they were horrendous. I mean, the design was so complex that they were just. And I looked at these and just thought, wow, you know, okay, these are a nightmare to work with. They really are a nightmare. And over the course of the next 3 days, I redesigned them, sent them to him with a little bit of video training. He signed off on the project, no problem whatsoever. And then you know, just such a simple project. Well, for me, you know, in terms of the redesign, just the complexity of doing it. And about a month later, he contacted me and said, Russ, you know, got a bit of a problem, kind of messed the templates up. Can you help? So I said, well, yeah, sure. What? So he sent the information. I just said, look, you know, you're not following the instructions that I've given. And this is always the danger, is like, you know, Word works a certain way. And if you want to do your own thing, you're going to break it eventually. And as an off-the-cuff remark, I said, how are you getting on with these templates? He said, oh, they're brilliant. Oh, okay. How much time do you think they're saving? He says, oh, about 40 hours a month. So it's like, the value was immense. And, you know, they do C-level reports they're based on Fifth Avenue in Manhattan. And it's like, this easily saves them like $50,000 a year, at least for like 3 days work. And it was that which was the light bulb moment for me about the value that I bring to the table, or I can bring to the table. Yeah, that was kind of the main one. And then after that, then it was just like, right, I'll try it again with another one and another one. And it's just, once you can actually deliver something reliably and consistently, and also it's got to be value for money, of course, you know, otherwise it's just not going to happen. But that was the main one for me. I wouldn't say it's necessarily the best project, you know, in answer to your actual question, but rather that was a transitioning project for me. That switched me from like what I offer as like on an hourly rate basis to the actual value that I can bring as someone with this particular set of skills. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I mean, hey, realizing that you can save a customer, well, what is it? 40,000, 40? Yeah. Yeah. Knowing you can save a client that much money from one project, to me, that sounds like a home run and a big win. So that's awesome. And one thing, and related to this though, are there certain types of clients that you like working with? And of those clients, like, are there traits that you've been able to identify, and as you've, you know, grown, been able to point out easier, I will like this person, I will not like this person?
The main thing, especially with working online, and this applies to especially like for newer freelancers who are watching this, or people who are thinking of getting into freelancing, because a lot of this is video is becoming more prevalent nowadays. It's not so much of a problem, but the vast majority of the communication that we do is with writing, and the written word can be so misconstrued easily. And the two things that I stick by is basically communication and flexibility. You know, you have to communicate everything with a client. And for myself, I always consider myself to have failed if the client says, hey, Russ, you know, what's going on? How are we doing? You know, haven't heard from you. That's the key thing that I try and avoid is, you know, it's like, you have to be communicative. You have to be open. You have to let them know what's going on. That's the kind of key thing here in everything that we do online. You know, it's great when you and I are chatting here face to face like this, because you've got the face to face, you've got the body reaction, you can see, you know, the response. But communication and flexibility is key, because you have to be.
Yeah, and one thing I'll call out that you did really well. So our project was, I mean, what was it? It was upwards of 6 months, right? It lasted for basically over a year in different types of
summer through to December when you launched.
Yeah, but the tough part was, as a client, what was really tough was there's different stakeholders. So you would do one thing, but then there'd be like 5 to 50 other stakeholders that I'd get feedback from. So it wasn't just you and I, it was you and then this army of, you know, lawyers and HR and a bunch of people that were getting
your
feedback.
problem, not mine.
Exactly. So I bared that crust. But the thing that you did very, very well was it was okay, you didn't bend over backwards. Like you didn't say, I'll be available whenever you want, because that's like, oh God, this person must have nothing else going on. But what you did was you stated very explicitly, this is what I can do. And if you want to hop on a quick call, these are the times that I can be available. And so it was kind of that perfect synergy of balance where, like, I think one of the things that I look for in clients is, or don't look for, is if that client believes that I'll answer something within an hour, gone, totally gone, right? But if it was something like with like what we had, it was like, all right, Russ, you don't have to answer within 48 hours, but I do need to know what's the progress, what'll be done in a week, what'll be done in 4 weeks, because I got to relate this to, you know, the other stakeholders. So that's one thing that Russ did. You did crazy well. Was you didn't bend over backwards, but it was always very clear the progress of the project from your end and sort of next potential steps. So cool. All right. Wrapping up, you're going to have 3 sort of rocket questions. The first question, you have about a minute and 37 seconds. The last 2 questions, you only have about 10 seconds. So you ready?
I guess.
You're going to have to earn that classroom behind you, Russ. So first question, a freelancer just starting out, what are you telling them?
You need proof. You need proof that you can do what you're trying to do. Okay, and creating proof takes time. So if you're a writer, you need to write. Yeah, you can't just say I'm a writer and not write. So you need, as I mentioned earlier, don't spread yourself too wide. Pick on a niche and focus on a niche initially, because then you can write material. You can get proof for that particular niche, for that particular industry. So when you're applying for jobs, you've got something to show them. Yeah, nobody's going to hire you if they don't think you can do the job, because there's so much competition out there that someone else will have the proof. So that's what you need. You need to show that you can do what you're going to be hired to do.
Awesome. That was under a minute, so kudos. Which means I'm going to add a question, but it's still going to be in under 10 seconds. You have to answer it. So next question: what's your favorite tool that's helping move the needle for your business right now?
Microsoft Word.
Beyond that.
Microsoft. What else I use? I use a project management tool called Plutio, which is fantastic. So.
Awesome. Favorite book?
Favorite book? I've got to say Lord of the Rings from my childhood. One of the first books that I read repeatedly, time and time again, and it still kind of sticks with me.
Okay, ready for the last question? It's going to be super difficult. Good luck. You're going to have to give a pen and paper so you can start doing some calculations. Favorite animal?
Dog.
Do that. Russ, thank you so much. Have a good night.
Matt, that's always a pleasure. Honestly, always a pleasure, mate.
Awesome. Cheers, bud.